Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Paranormal Rangers, native Paranormal Crossroads. It's myself and Michelle Miners and Jonathan Dover today. We're missing some other people in our group. What's happening is they're on their own little vacation. So we're going to take up the hour with you today and sharing some of the questions that you are going to be asking over the comments, and we will try to answer what we can. Good morning, John. How are you doing?
Yeah. Oh, good morning. I'm doing great. Unfortunately, Stan couldn't be here today. He's got other things that he's doing with his book, and he'll be being pulled at a lot to do other podcasts and to do book signings and travel and hopefully make some money while he's there. So we're all rooting for him and maybe if he becomes a millionaire, then he'll remember us little people down here.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm really proud of Stan and his accomplishments and what he's been able to share with his career as being a ranger with the Navajo tribe. And now he has expressed his stories and experiences within his book. And we will have a show with Stan and asking, him to share what he wrote as an author, and is it's called The Paranormal Ranger. So we're excited for him, and we excuse him for um, out there promoting him and himself and his book, and being able to capture the audience's attention with all the wonderful stories he's written in behalf of being a native paranormal ranger.
And just so everybody out there knows, I have told Stan that we will be his best friend as long as he has money. As soon as he runs out of money, then we'll turn our backs and go the other way. So,
And that's a brotherhood, right? You guys like
yeah,
have this brotherhood between
it's a native thing.
you. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
No,
Yeah,
I'm just kidding, but we always tease him about that.
right, right. Don't forget the little people. Yeah, exactly. Well,
And
speaking
then
of,
and
go ahead.
then Laura and those other guys are kind of on a they're on a working vacation. They're
Yeah,
having meetings and just all the bureaucratic stuff that has to happen. Uh, and I'm sure they're just wishing that they were with us now.
yeah, exactly. In fact, it's really interesting. They have their own show too. They're in the United Kingdom, new teachings, and they both go out there and promote their healing work that they do with new teachings to their UK audience. And we hope to one day have them come on this show and we talk about what they do out there in
Yeah,
the United Kingdom.
and
That would be a really cool show to have too.
and there is a time difference. So right now over in the UK, it's late at night.
Yeah, I think it's around the 7 or 8 o'clock timeline, but they're going to be on a phone call for several hours,
So
things
so
together for their show.
so you get to listen to us flap our lips all day for the next hour.
Well, it's so good to have us both on the show, and I'd like to ask you a question, Jonathan. Maybe promote some of the things that you've done as a ranger, but share some of the experiences of the experiences you've had on the Navajo reservation and off the reservation. Some of your paranormal experiences.
Well, first off, I was a Navajo Ranger for 27 years. Uh, there was a interlude, I call it, for
Hmm.
4 years where I was with the city of Winslow, Arizona Police Department. And while I was there, I was a patrol officer and I was a patrol sergeant, the first Native American sergeant promoted in that department. And, you know, it got to the point where I was either going to get shot or I was going to have to shoot somebody. And I got this strange feeling that maybe the city wasn't going to cover me like I thought they were going to. And it became very problematic. So I went back with the Rangers and I told myself I could do this standing on my head. So I did that. Uh, as far as the paranormal stuff, starting in 1984, uh, I saw a cigar shaped craft fly
Mhm.
over. It was going really, really slow. I think if it would have stopped, I would have gone up to it and knocked on the door and asked it for a ride. It
Right.
was a very intense curiosity. I've maintained that type of curiosity my whole life. No matter what's happened, I've seen things. I've seen uh, craft that look like boxes. I've seen them that look like capsules or pills. I've seen some that look like delta wings or triangles. I've seen the classic saucers and lots of orbs, some as big as semi tractor trailer truck. The cab, like the cab overs. I've seen some that were that big. And, I've always looked at them. And at one point, I started running into situations where I gained time. I gained about 45 minutes of time at one point and arrived where I was supposed to be going 45 minutes early, which wasn't possible. Um, and several other times I've lost time in about 30-minute increments.
Mhm.
And everybody tells me, "Oh my God, you were abducted." And I just say, "Well, I don't know that for certain, but to me, it's irritating." Um, because in one case, I was on my way to get some pizza, and I'm looking up through the windshield, and I see a glowing orb traveling from west to east on just over the top of Interstate 40 outside of Winslow. I pulled over to the side of the road and I watched it, turned off my engine, opened the sunroof on top of the. I had a Yukon then, and I watched it. And as I watched it was doing this. It was going like you would see a tadpole swimming. Just
Right.
the thing was glowing white, and there was a corona around it, almost like some kind of stasis field.
Mhm.
And as I watched it, um, a phone call came in, and the my usual method of getting a pizza is to I'm 30 miles away, so I call the pizza place, I make my order, and as I jump in the truck, and by the time I get there, the pizza is done. And it's just coming out of the oven, and I can pick it up, and it's nice and hot. Well, on this day, I watched this UFO go over the top silently, and as I as I was nearing the end of watching it go over the horizon, I get a phone call from the pizza place, and they said, "Where are you? Your pizza's been ready for over a half hour now, and we're wondering if you're going to come and pick it up." So I realized that I had lost somewhere around a half hour of time because at that point I was only 8 miles away from Winslow, and so after that I decided I'm getting me a dash cam, and so I did, and I put it in the windshield, and after that I didn't see any more UFOs. And I was actually okay with that because at that point it was really getting uh,
Right.
burdensome to be losing time. Uh, the majority of them were where you're driving down the road, you pass a landmark that you've seen countless times, you know, it's only maybe 5 miles away from your house, and you drive and you drive and you drive, and it seems like you're driving forever.
Hmm.
And then you pass that same landmark, you know, after driving for another half hour, and you realize that, you know, you should have been home 25 minutes ago and that you're still on the road. And that's happened to me a whole bunch of times. And after I got the dash cam, none of those happened anymore. So I'm okay with that. I don't care to see anymore. Um, don't know if there's an abduction taking place, or what the heck's going on, or maybe it's just a glitch in the time matrix, and we're all just holograms of, in the big scheme of things. Who knows? You know, people are saying that we live in a hologram universe. Um, I have no idea, but I'm good with it. And since then, I've gotten a new camera for my vehicle, and that one's a 4K camera.
Hmm.
So if I see anything with that, I mean, I can see a shooting star, and I can watch it on TV later on, and actually see it in some detail.
I found it really interesting, Jonathan. You know, you've seen a lot of aircraft, but we had a chance this summer to go uh, in the June timeline and go on the Navajo reservation to do an investigation. And what and being with the person that we went with who joined us on this particular trip, I found it really fascinating his identity of identifying what's satellite and what's real aircraft. And and it was really interesting to watch all the satellite activity. I never really paid attention before, and how things can be misinterpreted and misidentified. And it was really interesting the things. And there is a certain pattern that goes along with watching a satellite versus an aircraft. And then it's just a trajectory. I mean, the satellites move very fast, so people might identify that as being an aircraft. But learning that technique during our trip was very fascinating to me because I never really paid attention to that. I'm an energetic person. I feel the energy of things that were happening around me. And of course, I'm very sensitive to that. Even when I can feel when aircraft is nearby, I've had the same experiences like yourself. I've been in southern Utah where I saw a huge aircraft over my room, and I was on the porch, and it was an unsettling feeling, to be honest. Like was being watched, and most of the sky was gone, voided of the stars. And I think I've talked about this on sequential shows, past shows. And when you start to feel this feeling of you're being watched, it becomes very uncomfortable. And I can see why maybe you were tiring of the aircraft coming into your foresight, and now you wanted to, because of these time loops that you were going through. Did you find yourself really tired and exhausted, or did you just feel like you had no control over that feeling?
Well, you have to understand that my work day started before daybreak.
Hmm.
Uh, I'd be driving for an hour before, as the sun was coming up. Um, I'd go to work, and I'd work through lunch because I didn't really have any place to go, and I'm saving my money. And as an aside, I had $40 uh, every 2 weeks to spend on lunch. And if I wanted to buy myself toys, things that I needed for work, or tape recorders or whatever, I would have to save my lunch money. So I never ate lunch. And if I saved it up for a month, I'd have $80. And so, believe it or not, you know, I was poor, and the Rangers didn't get paid very much. So I would work through lunch, and then by about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the office where I worked in was getting too warm because it had a sheet metal roof
Mm-hmm.
and no air conditioning. And we had mice running around the office there, so we kept airsoft pistols to be able to shoot them as they're running down the walls, along the floor. And eventually our building got condemned and they tore it down and we had to move. But I would stay 5 o'clock. Everybody in Window Rock is leaving for home. And so I would wait till 6 o'clock because it was way too crowded. It was just wall to wall cars heading out of Window Rock at 5.
Mm-hmm.
So about 6:30, I'd get on the road, and depending on if there was an accident, if anything else happened,
Mm-hmm.
I would get home maybe about 8:30, 9 o'clock at night, and that was my day. So I was already exhausted. Normal days were 14-hour days, 5 days a week. So um, it was just a routine. And so I'm tired already. I would get home, uh, eat a big dinner, go to sleep, and the next morning get up and get my. I was a single parent, so I'm getting my two kids up in the morning so that they can and take them to the bus so that they can get to school. So that was my normal routine, and then I'd leave, come back and switch vehicles and hit the road. So yeah, there's a lot of stuff that goes on if you just keep your eyes open. One of the things about the satellites that you have to realize
Mm-hmm.
is that usually after 10 o'clock you won't see them anymore
Right.
because the terminator where the sunlight is keeps on moving, and then you won't they won't be reflecting light anymore after a certain time. So if you're out sky watching early in the evening, you have a really good shot at seeing the space station come over, and
Right.
that was very very bright and very low. And then after that, you'll start seeing satellites all over the place. Uh,
Right.
Now, if you see satellites changing direction, that's another thing, uh, because the satellites do not change direction.
No, they
So
don't.
if you're seeing them change directions or making weird maneuvers, then that's something different.
And sometimes they can be identified too as shooting stars. You know what I'm saying? Once in a great while, you could say, "Okay, is that a shooting star? Is that an aircraft?" There's a lot in the sky that's going on, and but it's just an interesting phenomena as you experience it. I've experiencing a really interesting stuff. When I first started in this field, I was more out of curiosity. I wasn't really into the ufology information center. Most people go out and they want to see something. That was not my case. And I had a friend who worked for the Pentagon, and it was really interesting. He took us out to Immigration Hill here in Salt Lake City. And he goes, "You can see some of them out here." And, I didn't believe him at first. I thought he was a little interesting because I thought, okay, a guy's inviting us, a group of us, to come out and witness, I guess, some maneuvers that they would do, similar to what you're talking about, the satellite patterns. And so we went to Immigration Hill, and oh my gosh, we got a light show that night. But there was the most impressive thing to me was something told me to look to my right, over my right shoulder, and there was a craft hovering about 200 feet away, and it was pretty close. And it had a iridescent, a greenish light glow to it on the bottom. And I started to get a little bit nervous. I wouldn't say afraid, nervous, and it just hovered there. So that was probably be the first time I had my experience there, living in this area of seeing something, unusual. And I did an account and say, "Come out right there. There's an alien spaceship floating right there." It just was a piece of aircraft, and then I thought in my mind maybe the Air Force or somebody at the Air Force is testing equipment, testing a new craft is where I went based on the
Right.
person that took us out there. But it was he was telling us, okay, this is the difference. If they tic tac, which is a term that's used today in the ufology or UAPs now it's called, they have a maneuvering, and our aircraft can't do that. It's
Right.
usually linear, in nature, and so these things were going tic tacky, and it was just a great experience. I didn't have any fear. I just thought either this is technology being tested from Hill Air Force Base, or you know, I'm seeing the real thing. But I never put a lot of thought into it until I went up to the Uinta Basin and started seeing things I've never seen before. So it's an interesting experiences that we've had. Um, there was a question here from Julie.
Yeah, Julie asked a question,
Yeah.
and it concerns if implants have been found on the nations, referring to First Nations or tribal nations. That's how they're referred to because they're considered sovereigns. So this
Hmm.
U.S. deals with them on a State Department level. Um, there has been in the past, but it hasn't been well documented, and it's mainly because guys like Daryl Sims, Dr. Stephen Greer, have
Hmm.
done a lot of foundational work in that area. Uh, but what's going on is that when it comes to UFO reports, um, I have been told. Hang on a minute, my cat's playing with my power cords here.
And he's trying to get on camera too, trying to
Yeah.
wiggle that camera a little
Yep.
bit.
Yeah, she's pulling on the power cords, and let me move her.
No problem. You know, it's been really interesting, and Jonathan will come back and finish the
Okay, I'm
story.
back.
Okay.
I was going to say that there's a lot of activity that happens, but if you look at MUFON and other organizations that investigate UFOs, then there's almost a black hole when it comes to Indian nations because Indian nations do not like to report this stuff. They do not like to advertise it. And to be honest, they don't want a lot of non natives coming to the reservation to hold hands and sing kumbaya in a big circle. And these sky beings will not come back.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is these are our holy people, and we don't want anybody to disturb them because if they're disturbed, the holy people came to us in the past to impart knowledge, and they may not want to come back again. So that's what we see with that. Now, Daryl Sims has a whole, if you ever
Mm-hmm.
see him in person, he'll bring a display case with all these little implant devices that have been taken out of people. And when I first met Chuck Modlin, who was one of the STAR team members for MUFON, he was a physicist and had worked in a lot of different top secret labs. And he offered to scan me. And as he scanned, there was he didn't find anything, but he scanned me from head to foot with the device, and then he turned around and he put a black light on me. And as he was doing that, right in the crook of my elbow here, um, a tiny little deal fluoresced. It was just intensely bright, and it was right over where my
Oh, interesting.
where my vein was.
Mm-hmm.
and we just looked at it and said, "Huh, what's that?" And even Stan saw it, and but there was no scar there. There was no
Right.
needle puncture or anything else. It was just that little place, and I don't know where I got something that would glow like that on there, but so that's when it comes to native tribes, and understand when they go to the hospital. The joke is that you go into the hospital, they'll say, "Oh, here's some ibuprofen. Uh, Take two of these, and if it gets worse, come back." That's the usual response. So they're not going to be proactive about looking for anything.
Interesting that you would talk about puncture wounds. Of course, I've been up in Uinta Basin for a very long time up there. There is one puncture wound on my stomach that will not heal, and it scabs over from time to time. And I don't pick it. I don't. It heals, but then it comes back. And someone suggested to me, maybe you got an implant. And I said, well, I don't know. I mean, I don't feel discomfort. But I found that interesting that you were talking about wounds and punctures and scars or whatever. But this one never heals. And I haven't even, I've lived with it. And someone told me once that maybe it moves around. There are implants that possibly move around in your body, so it cannot be detected. And there are famous stories out there that talk about these things. People know that they feel like they've been abducted and then given implants. I dealt with one such case in Uinta Basin. I will not reveal this person, but I had to deal. They claim to have gotten an implant in their head, and and then I reported it to the team that we were working from a scientific and medical side of things. And there was actually a 600-page report, I guess, done on this individual. And then I heard nothing more from that. Someone had suggested on here maybe they're just trying to hide it. And in a personal conversation that I had with this person, I said, why wouldn't you want to get rid of that? And their curiosity was the same, where they just said, well, I want to learn from it, or I want to experience if there's something going to happen. To me, that would be like a discomfort, like, or I'm being tracked by something. You know what I'm saying? And so, who's to know? Your cat's having a fun time today, isn't
Yeah, yeah,
she?
she sure is.
Yeah, yeah,
She,
she's
she
loving the.
sees all these cords dangling, and she's bored. So
I
she
love
needs
it. She's
attention.
trying to
So
participate in the background.
yeah,
So,
re-indigenizing minds asked,
mhm,
how come are 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 there any men in black on the
I saw that.
reservation, and why don't natives get probed? Um, when you're saying probed, usually you're referring to Uranus. Um, I'm just going to
I
call
love
it what it
like
is.
probably
It,
the way
and
below, down below the waistline.
yeah, and there's always jokes about that.
There is.
I'm sure that kind of stuff happens. There's just no information on it up here.
Right.
Remember, the reservations are like this total void as far as information. There have been many times where they're trying to get MUFON chapters established, and there's nothing. At one time, we even, with the Rangers, me and Stan were trying to develop some kind of a written agreement with MUFON
Mhm.
where they would pass on to us uh, different cases up here that we could look at.
Mhm.
But that never went through because of the internal politics, and it was just a mess at the time. So I'm sure there's a lot of implants that are being put into natives. Natives seem to be targeted quite a bit by UFOs flying around here and landing and occupant sightings and things like that. There's just no information on it because people don't talk about it. So
Well, it's the native way. They don't want to talk for the fear of shame and the fear of interacting with our sacred beliefs. When I am up in the Uinta Basin and did the interviews that I did, I have over 400. The natives did talk to me about the men in black and a particular time in an era that the men in black would show up during the Bigelow era. And I'm just going to be candid here. A lot of them were talking about these guys in black suits. I'll tell you my own personal experience with the men in black. My partner and I were headed up to Skinwalker Ranch, and it was just our routine, thing we did every week. And we happened to be coming down a road that's not used by main traffic, and it was kind of by the high school there. And as we were turning, this car came out of nowhere and about T-boned us. And we're like, where did that car come from? I mean, this thing was going about 100 miles, and he was able to stop like right before it would have hit us if we had gone any further. And we just don't know where that thing came from. It just came out of nowhere. And the manager, the on-site manager who lived there prior to the show, before they got the new live-on couple there, she would talk about these vans that would pull up above the book cliffs up, I think west of where she was living, or south, excuse me, south of where she was living. And she said these guys would come out and they were bald and they would have binoculars and dark glasses that would look over the ranch. And anybody who visited, there seemed to be a pattern. Well, one day, I was visiting and she goes, I'm going to go, let's go out to the field and just be nonchalant. And certainly we saw them on top of the book cliff. So that was an interesting experience. But some of the natives have recorded on the Ute Reservation that they got knocks on the door after they witnessed a phenomena of like a sighting of a Bigfoot or a sighting of aliens, or they were visited. And a lot of them did not want to talk. They were very superstitious to talk about their experiences. And afraid too that these things would come back. So we are a superstitious culture. We don't want
Yeah,
something to come back and haunt us. So
yeah,
those,
we
yeah.
have had men in black on Navajo. Um, we've in 1977 there was a recovery of a crashed vehicle where the police officer that I talked to said that there were two occupants, but around the craft that was
Right.
disabled, and that another craft came and picked them up. And
Mhm.
then after that, the government showed up with people, and they loaded this craft on. They brought a lowboy trailer with them
Mhm.
that you use to haul big tanks and tractors and stuff. And they put a big canvas over the top of it and hauled it off. And they were told, don't talk about this, don't say anything.
Right.
Um, and he didn't until about 1984 when I met the guy, and he was close to retirement. And I think he just told me about it because I was interested in those kind of things. Um, we've had them show up in Crown Point, New Mexico, after a rather spectacular incident where a UFO was hovering, flying around these houses, and a group of them and a bunch of little people came out of the UFO
Mhm.
along with the Bigfoot. And one of the occupants of one of those houses opened up with a rifle and started shooting, and said he hit one. The next morning, the police all showed up, and then somebody showed up in a black uh, Cadillac Escalade
Mhm.
and picked up the whatever was shot on the ground. Um, After that, everybody was told, "Keep your mouth shut. Don't talk about this." And when Stan went over there to investigate it, because we had gotten a report on it too,
Mhm.
nobody from the fire department, nobody from the police department would even give him the time of day. Nobody would talk to him. which is real unusual because we know almost all these guys.
I bet that was fascinating too. Um, I can't answer. This gentleman is asking about Skinwalker Ranch. They're secretly monitoring radio frequencies emitting from the Orion's belt. At this point in time, I am not on the ranch on a daily basis or a weekly basis, and I'm just going to say I do not know what they're doing over there. That's the business of Skinwalker Ranch. But I also know that there's been filming going on for their show, and that's all that I know. So I have no idea what is going on there.
And there could be some things going on with Skinwalker Ranch as far as research goes,
Hmm.
that they are not able to talk about or not able to disclose, because they might be put in the place of a contractor trying to gather information for the government. And so, as a contractor, it wouldn't fall under the Freedom of Information Act to find out anything. And they're not going to discuss it openly either. So that's just how those things work.
Well, getting off, the Skinwalker thing, I had the opportunity to go and visit with a ranch down in Arizona, and the Edmonds. It's a book, Stardust Ranch had similar activity, similar, and he actually wrote a book before his death, and he was a great friend, a close friend of mine, and his wife is a very close friend of mine. And we had Men in Black show up when we were down there interviewing John Edmonds, and they would also have jeeps in this point of view, which I really think it was military. There was an Air Force base by that area. And it seems to be that when you're near a military installation site, it just seems like the security comes across a lot in this particular ranch. But we did see some aircraft that day while we were there interviewing John, um, and it was really fascinating. And there was energy being emitted from his land as well too. And a lot of people in the book, if you're really interested in reading that book, Stardust Ranch, Mr. Bigelow was also involved in wanting to acquisition the ranch, and John would not let him. So it's a fascinating story, similar to Scoop. So there are other ranches around the country, around the world that experience similar things. You know, with UAPs, UFO, Bigfoot sightings, so on and so forth. John and I didn't ask to have this in our lives. We were given experiences. And this is why today we're sharing our stories and our experiences with you out there, our audience, is because we want to inform people that, our culture is important to us. It's important to our way of living, and that we as Native Americans have been a part of this phenomena for centuries, for decades. And it's a part of us, it's a part of our DNA. And I'm going to let John talk a little bit more about that, about the DNA part.
Yeah, the Native Americans, we've been here forever. Seems like uh, the timelines are slowly being pushed out further and further. They're starting to realize that Native Americans were actually here a lot earlier than The theory is, oh, they came over the land bridge, and into Alaska and down that way and populated, as they went along. But now they're finding out that you know that was 15,000 years ago, and now they're finding out evidence that it could be a lot earlier, and that the continent was pretty much spontaneously, uh, you know, populated during
Mhm.
that time. And there's no rhyme or reason. They try to make connections with DNA, and they still can't do it. And in fact, just so everybody knows, when you do a 23andMe or Ancestry or whatever, you can find out where your DNA comes from, what main groups it comes from. They do not have the ability yet to tell you that you're this tribe or that tribe. They can only say, "Oh, you're Native American."
Hmm.
That's it, and this percentage. And so it's kind of odd, I guess. They can't suss out those DNA strands enough to really figure it out. So we're still in our infancy when it comes to DNA, even though there's been a lot of scientific breakthroughs. We're a long way from figuring it out.
Yeah, John, they just learn how to even just stabilize the molecule that keeps it so that they can test the DNA, you
Yeah,
know, with the gel. And so to stabilize it, because it would flatten out and it wouldn't go anywhere further. So they couldn't stabilize that. And now they
yeah.
have technology
E-
to do that.
Ethan asked about the Estrella Mountains
Australia.
down,
Uh-huh.
down just east of Phoenix.
Uh-huh.
And, the Estrellas in that tribe's language around Gila River
Hmm.
are known as, in that language, it's called Stargate. And the native tribes in that area have always said that this is where the sky people came through to visit us. So they refer to it as the Stargate. But the Estrellas, and they're a mountain range that travels pretty much north and south, and that kind of locks Phoenix, Gilbert, and Mesa into that Phoenix Basin. And so there's a lot of activity that's taken place there. People go there to go sky watching, and there's still craft that come through on that
Hmm.
side to this day.
Well, the Phoenix Lights is a perfect example. You had given that on another show. What you had identified in that storyline with the Phoenix Lights, what you had felt being in that area about that timeline. You know, people have said that here in Utah near the Cedar City that there is a mountain there that aircraft opens up and goes in and out. That was another interview I had with the gentleman who lived just at the base of those mountains
Yeah,
outside Cedar. So there are very strategic places around the world that have people have seen aircraft and phenomena. Usually one is interconnected to the other. So if you've seen a Bigfoot experience, you're going to find that you're going to have a UAP or a UFO show up. I've seen that often. I've heard
yeah,
that from many people.
yeah. The deal about the Bering Strait again, re-indigenizing minds is making the statement that they didn't come over in canoes or you know most Native American tribes call themselves some form of the people
Mhm.
in their native languages. Um, Dene means the people.
Mhm.
Almost every tribe has some version of that. They state in their deal that they've always been here, that they've been here since the beginning, and that's why they resisted so strongly, and as a result, there was a genocide that took place to kill off natives, and so Michelle and I are um, survivors of that, um, and
Well,
so
yeah.
we like to think we're pretty tough, um, but tough in the way that you just endure. And we've still had to endure racism. We've had to endure micro uh, uh, aggression of people just saying, "Oh, well, you're brown." I've actually had a person say, "You stupid Indian," um, and took off running after I decided to go change his mind about his opinion. And but that stuff happens all the time. And you don't realize it till you've worked or lived in a border town around a reservation that those things still prevail. And yet the Native Americans were absolutely feared when they were in conflict with the Anglo. There were stories that if you got captured by natives, they would torture you, and they would keep you alive and torture you until finally you expired. Um, I just finished a book called Save the Last Bullet for Yourself.
Hmm.
And in that story is given front row credits because the troops in Custer's command spoke about that. And all the other troop commands in the past, just after the Civil War, had all perpetuated that same story that Native Americans tortured people on a regular basis. And so the thing that they said was always save the last bullet and never get captured. Um, what I found out is that 80% of Custer's troops and Renos and Benteens and everybody else were new hires into the military. A lot of them were trying to get there to get to the gold fields and the Black Hills. So they would join the military, get transported over there, and then desert to go find the rich, get rich. And so the military was actively keeping people from taking horses and weapons. And Custer was actually being court martialed at the time just before the Little Bighorn because some of his troops killed deserters, and that was against policy. So he was brought to Washington, D.C. to answer to those questions. Later on, he went into battle, and the natives up there still celebrate June 25th because they said that that was when the everywhere spirit caused the soldiers to go crazy and start shooting themselves and the other soldiers.
Interesting.
And the government and the Park Service will not let any bodies be exhumed. The other thing I found was that I was to steal a line from Michelle that was very interesting from a historical standpoint was that we read in the history books that Custer's body was found and he was laying there pristine, no marks on him, and that he looked like he had just fallen asleep. He was stripped of his clothing, but the story is that he looked like he was sleeping. Uh, Believe it or not, that story is not true. Take it from somebody who's done criminal investigations and has worked on numerous body recoveries after 3 days of laying in the sun in 100-degree heat. Your body will turn black. It'll start to decompose and 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 bloat, and it's not a pretty sight. Believe me, it's not. I don't know how I did it, but we'd have to recover people that had gone out in the desert herding sheep or whatever, and they never came home, and we'd search for them, and 3 or 4 days later, we'd find their body, and not pretty at all. And so they think that this story came out because they didn't want to. They were trying to make a hero out of him, but they said that in actuality he would have been purple black and bloated, just like all the other bodies that were out there. So
Interesting.
that's something I learned.
Yeah, that's a wonderful book, read. There you have. I want to go back to this question about the canoe people in the Pacific Northwest. I would imagine that's where it was. because of my lineage being Ojibwe, we do have a creation story that talks about that there was no Bering Strait, that the Earth 20,000 years ago was called Turtle Island, that piece of land that showed up, and the natives came over in ships and boats, and because they're canoe people, and so we're talking about timelines here, Jonathan. The Bering Strait, we have a weather pattern
Yeah.
change, the ice age and such, and they said 20,000 years ago the ice age was there, and these people from, they would consider the UK now, sailed over in ships during that time and populated that part of the Pacific Northwest, the Northwest Canada, whatever, was a group of people that came over. Maybe like you were talking about, that they interacted with the group of natives that were already there, and their bloodlines probably mixed. And so and but the as an Ojibwe, we are the canoe people. We're wild rice raisers. We use our canoes, and we call Mother Earth Turtle Island. So that's really of history that's coming from another native tribe, and I appreciate that them bringing that forward.
Yeah, Julie actually made a statement about Bigfoot and UFOs being interconnected,
Yeah, I saw that.
and
Mhm.
mentioned David Pilates and his statements in that direction. Uh, Dave is a real good friend of mine. I've spoken at his conference up in Montana, and I was invited to speak. It's still on YouTube. There was an interview done with me on stage during his premiere of the UFO Connection, Missing 411, and we spoke about this at length.
Mhm.
And one of the things that me and Stan have seen over a lot of years is that every time there's increases in UFO sightings, there's corresponding increases in Bigfoot sightings, and
Exactly.
vice versa.
Right.
And that knowledge is, it's too in your face to ignore,
Right.
because it came like clockwork. We saw what they would refer to as UFO flaps that were occurring, where there's greater incidence of UFO reports suddenly, and then it'll go quiet for a time. And during those flaps, we would get corresponding reports of Bigfoot showing up.
That's interesting. It's interesting, those correlations, and the fact that you told a story earlier that on the reservation that Bigfoot came out of the ship with these little alien life forms. You know, there's there's an interaction going on with maybe that extraterrestrial world that we're not aware of. And maybe we're not ready for this information. Maybe we're trying to get along with each other here on the earth as just different nations, because you talked earlier about the prejudice amongst even the human race, that we can't seem to get over each other. Let's see, what did this gentleman say? Doing YouTube presentation next month. Oh,
Yeah,
that's nice. That's nice. Well, we'll get in contact. That would be wonderful.
yeah,
Well,
we are gonna have to end. We started 5 minutes early for
and there's
those
a
of you,
reason for that. My
and
apologies.
Michelle has to leave right away because she has a very she's got a banker that she needs to talk to, and this has to do with our podcast and everything else. So I think that's important. And bankers are very time wise. They're very punctual. So she needs to be punctual too. Uh,
Well, the viewers and such, we would love to have your support and subscribe to our channel. And wouldn't this wouldn't happen without you. And so we've got to keep the back end running, the videos running, everything, and we have to pay for those things. So we're looking for those type of sponsorships that help us help you for this wonderful knowledge and the great storytelling that Stan and Jonathan and New Teachings and Andrew and Laura and everybody that's involved on this channel. We really love sharing this knowledge with you because we have experienced so much in our lives. We want to tell the truth, our truth. And you notice that Jonathan interacts with some of the people that you've gone and listened to their YouTube, and they have a big presence out there. Apparently, they're attracted to John's understanding of his experiences, and that's why they come to him and such. But we'll reach out to, to some of you, and we would love to um, get in touch with Re Indigenous Minds, and we would love to get in touch with you and move this forward. And hope you guys have a great day. I'm sorry to leave you at such an early time, but Jonathan, any last words?
Just thank you, everybody, for showing up. Thank you for the insightful questions that you had. And we'll hope to do more of this.
Absolutely. All right. Take care.
Okay, we'll talk to you later.